Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review for the movie Dark Phoenix. And, whew, this wasn't a good movie. I really can understand what they were trying to do with the script, but they weren't able to completely pull it off. This was kind of trying to be a more faithful adaptation of the Phoenix storyline from the comic books, but it still didn't work. Mainly because the characters' contents were not really there. See, the thing you have to watch out for in ensemble casts are you have to watch out that you don't make them into cardboard cutouts. Scott was essentially just like, I love Jean! And that's about all he did. Storm did really about nothing. I mean, she had cool Storm moments. No, nothing. Nightcrawler, again, some cool moments for him, but really nothing to latch him onto or make him into the story. The main story, even though it is titled Dark Phoenix, still revolves around Xavier. But we essentially go on and they're trying to make him out to be like this glory hound asshole, which doesn't really fit right. And that, oh my god, frickin' Raven, Jennifer Lawrence as Mystique really felt like she phoned it in for this one. I mean, granted, she probably read it and understood that she was going to be killed in about the first third of the movie, but just her lines and everything and how she was acting was just not right or within the characters that we've seen built up throughout the rest of the franchise. This was like not the way to end this. It was like ending with not even a whimper, more like a wet fart. Yeah. So, we start off and we get Jean's origin story as she's a little girl and accidentally causes an accident that we are led to believe kills both of her parents, but we will find out later on in the movie that it only killed one. And Xavier comes and acts nice and says, hey, I'll take you to the school for children and all that, and I'll help you out, and there's nothing that you can break that I can't fix. And we then flash forward into the future. We have gone to now 1992, and we flash in and we see the shuttle Endeavour doing its stuff, and it encounters a problem. So the President calls Xavier and is like, hey, we'll use the X-Men and all that. And it's really kind of weird. They play it off like he's trying to be a glory hound and be an asshole and everything like that, but he has done a really good job of having the X-Men become a great face for mutant kind and using that as public relations and trying to make it so that way they're really valuable and seen as valuable to the world. It's really kind of odd. I know that the plot and the narrative are trying to push that he's being stupid and bad and all that, and I'm like, he's not really trying to do that. He's even when he makes this call when they go up to space, Raven doesn't want to do this. I'm like, you guys have specialized powers that could really help these people in a bad situation. But okay, now granted, hers really doesn't help since she's a shapeshifter, but she really doesn't even do much in this movie. She essentially whines and then dies. Yeah. Sorry, just actually thinking about it is she doesn't really do any cool ass, kick ass fighting things or anything. It did hurt. Because they go on the mission, they are able to save all of the crew, but of course, Xavier wants to try and save them all, and of course, there's the thing spinning. They thought it was a solar flare, but it's, of course, the Phoenix Force. Never named that, though, because you gotta be careful with them rights. But they're able to get it and get everybody out. Jean absorbs the Force and is like crazy up, but they're able to get her in. They come on down. Raven starts hanging in on Professor X, talking about how it should be named X Women, and I'm like, okay, what about fucking Nightcrawler. I mean, him teleporting people out. I mean, he was helping too. I mean, I get what they were attempting to do with the line, but it was just like, okay, alright, cool. It just felt awkward, and seeing it before the movie, I'm just like, this is gonna be one of them things. So, after their little thing, Jean starts going fucking nutso because she absorbed something that she really doesn't know anything about. And it's really destroying all the mental blocks that Xavier put into place and all that. And she's partying out there with Scott and all of them. We see Dazzler. It's like, okay, cool. Ooh, fan service. Whatever. Nothing is done with it. So Jean's kind of freaking out and then blasts everybody accidentally and passes out. She's freaked out. She doesn't want to hurt anybody, and especially Scott, and decides to try and leave. And of course, Xavier couldn't get into her mind and all that. And Raven's pissed off about this because Hank did a physical on her, and she's like, wow, okay, she's super powerful. I gotta make better machines to do all your stuff. But she books out of there. While this is going on, we see that aliens come to Earth and take over this one chick. I'm like, alright, cool. And then starts like being able to use telekinesis and everything. These aliens aren't really very well explained or have that much lore put behind them, so they can essentially do whatever and pull an ass for, which they kind of do and become essentially super soldiers at the end, which only 50 cows can take out, but regular bullets don't really. There are weird things that happen in this movie. So, she goes to try and find her father. Well, of course, Xavier knows where she's going. They're bringing all that up into effect, and they go off, and she finds her dad, and Dad's like, I didn't want you, all that kind of stuff. I couldn't be able to deal with you and all that. Brings that, she's pissed off about that. She comes outside, sees everybody there. They're trying to talk her down and everything, trying to get her down, but she's using her Uber Phoenix powers. Well, it's really kind of weird. She just uses the same kind of level of powers that she's got, essentially, in this movie. I mean, she's already an Omega level mutant, and could pull this shit off regardless. And the only time that she really uses kind of like the Phoenix stuff is really towards the end. But she like takes them all out with impunity, and Hank was gonna try and like tase her ass, but Raven tried to talk her through it, but of course all the rage and emotions and everything are going off, and she accidentally flacks her, like force pushes her back, and she gets impaled and dies. And of course Hank pulls this all on Xavier and is pissed off that he still can't admit his mistake and all that kind of shit, and Xavier is pretty much put in the position of being the asshole again, saying, my sister's not even dead in the ground yet, and you're still having a go at me kind of shit. And granted, it should have been handled better of Xavier dealing with her trauma of, like, oh, your parents are dead, and the whole car crash and everything. But it just wasn't even-handed. It's just made to be that Xavier is a complete utter dick, and that everybody in this movie is just being kind of stupid and assholish. So strange. So, she's freaked out by this. She had, like, attacked a squadron of police cars and flies off and goes to see Magneto, who has his own island nation, pretty much. Jives with the comics, but with what's been going on here and being a terrorist and being left alone by the government, I mean, it's kind of weird, but I'm like, okay. She wants to know how to stop killing people, and he's trying to figure out the blood, but of course, the military comes in. She gets into a tussle with him, and he's able to save the military people and get them off, but then tells her to fuck off, essentially. So she does. By this point, the aliens are still trying to figure out where she's at, and of course, messes with the father to get information as well. But Jean, consequently, for some odd fucking reason that we aren't privy to, Lady Alien is able to pop up and find her, even though she's using her awesome abilities to hide as an old man drinking in a bar. And she whisks her off and tells her about the Force and all that, how they're this alien race that was destroyed essentially by the Phoenix Force, and that they saw what was going on, and that Jean was the only one that had ever absorbed the Force before. But we get into issues with that because later on in the movie, Alien Lady can absorb and retain the Phoenix Force. If this is the case, why didn't they fucking fly and try and capture it before any of this happened? It gets really weird in that there's certain things that'll happen that you'd be like, well, if this occurred, the plot completely falls apart. Plot demanded it syndrome, all in effect. Gets even worse from there. We have now seen that Hank takes off on his own and wants to join up with Eric. He tells him that Raven was killed by Jean, and they both want to go murder Jean Grey. I don't want to see Hank ever try and take the moral high ground against Charles Xavier ever again. Especially when we end this movie the way it is, in that Hank went to go murder a student. Okay? And then he allied himself with, at least, I will say, past terroristic cell element people to murder a student. Charles never did that. So Charles has figured out what's going on. They're able to track her to New York, and we get the weirdest kind of mutant fight between the Eric Brotherhood and Charles's, which includes Cyclops, Storm, and Nightcrawler, and then random psychic that Eric has, Beast, and I don't know if it's metal swingy hair dude. He wasn't really given a name or a mutant power. I'm like, shit, you can do so much with so many mutants. And this is what you do. But after Alien Lady had pretty much given the lowdown to Jean, they are pretty much getting attacked, and Magneto goes in to try and whoop her ass and is fucking taken out crazily and thrown out the window, and it's like, oh, okay. And the U.S. government's starting to come into effect as well, but Xavier is able to get into there with Cyclops. Well, he gets in there first, and Jean's able to read his memories and everything kind of come back into effect, and is trying to give the power then to Alien Lady. But the thing is, if she gives all the power to Alien Lady, for some reason that'll kill her. Because the plot demands it, there needs to be a sacrifice to this bullshit. I guess. I don't know. Since nobody's been able to contain the Phoenix Force at any point, it doesn't make sense of why giving it up would kill someone. And I'm not saying there can't be a good reason for that to happen. No reason is really presented other than the fact of to create tension. Yeah. Well, Charles is able to kind of help and stop what's going on, and she's kind of knocked out, but the U.S. government comes in and captures everybody because there's a mutant fight going on in the street, and a mutant has killed someone, so that's sent everybody to DEFCON, fuck off, and they're going off to a secret facility. But of course, Alien Lady has not gotten her full V8 juicing from the Phoenix Force and wants to finish that shit off. So we get a giant set piece where they attack the train and are just like the most generic super soldier kind of aliens possible. And they're like, hey, why don't you let us mutants go so that way you don't get fucked? And after a good amount of them get fucked, they're like, fuck, we fucked. Unlock them. And then we get some cool ass stuff. But the thing is, we get to a point where Magneto fucking crushes a train shit on them. And I'm like, why didn't you fucking do that at the beginning? There's like so many powers and so many ways that these people have used their powers before that they could just tactically take this situation on and ain't nobody's business. Again, down to the writing. And then, of course, Charles is able to wake up Jean, and she's doing this to protect her family. She, like, rips apart the train. We get her, like, dusting people, similar to the Last Stand. gets locked up with the alien lady and is getting ready to kind of destroy her, but she sees that she's hurting Scott and decides to fly off into space and bust her ass. I don't know. There really wasn't much given for Jean except to act all crazy and nutso in certain situations. So I really don't fault many of the actors for these things, except a little bit. I I weight it more towards the writing because they're given dog shit. So we see that Jean is dead, and that towards the end of it, that it's not really clear because in certain synopses after the fact, they're saying that like Charles retired, but it seems like he was forced out, and that the school is renamed the Jean Grey School. Okay, I understand that happens in the comics, but with all the events that have been occurring in this movie, that makes little to no sense, as Hank McCoy is now the head of the school. The dude who went off the reservation to go and murder one of his students is somehow deemed more trustworthy than Charles Xavier, who fucks off to France. Granted, he deserves a nice vacation and everything, but then fucks off to France. What the fuck? And we see some of the other X-Men kind of teaching him all that. It's like, oh, alright, fine. And then, of course, Magneto pops up and says that, hey, you offer me a home and everything once. How about I offer you a home? Pretty much, telling them to come join the Brotherhood. Now, granted, they aren't terrorists anymore, but it's really kind of fucked up. Asks him to play a game of chess, and then he reluctantly agrees and all that. It's like, that's how it ends, as we see a flaming phoenix in outer space. It was messy, convoluted, pacing was just kind of like all over the place. And this, I'd almost say that it's worse than the Last Stand one, because at least in the Last Stand, we had Wolverine to kind of carry the movie, and Hugh Jackman as Wolverine is pretty awesome. Granted, I understand not including Wolverine into these effects because of the age difference between him and Jean at this point. It would have been like kind of weird, but at least we had a couple more. No, Wolverine and Storm and even some of the other X-Men had even more roles and personalities in Last Stand than in this movie. And we also got the line, "I'm the Juggernaut, bitch." It was stupid, but kind of to an enjoyable stupid kind of level. This was just like, you didn't care. This was like the final paper that you needed to turn in at a certain point to end something out. And you're like, I don't care, I don't give a shit, I don't give a fuck, and we out. So, this doesn't give me much hope for New Mutants. And I just am glad that Marvel will soon be able to do stuff with the Fantastic Four and mutants in general. Hopefully we'll get something better. But this wasn't the worst movie possible. And I don't agree with, you gotta balance it out, but there are a lot of negatives on this because of what's done with characters and how plot is forced and makes characters do stupid things and how things are not as explained as they could or should be. And I'm not saying it needs to go into the umpteenth detail of the spoon an alien used to kill a Quacknar or whatever. I'm just like, why weren't they able to contain the Phoenix Force? Just give us a kind of rudimentary explanation for that. If they had ever seen anybody contain the Phoenix Force and be a vessel for the Phoenix Force before, and how that turned out, and if most of them are dead after the Phoenix Force leaves them. That kind of stuff. The whole Hank and Charles thing, that's much more problematic for me and much more into the character development. So, if you're an X-Men fan, I wouldn't really watch this one. The other ones were kind of better. If you're into deep character development, no. I mean, there's basic action scenes. Not even stuff to really show them going full ham and being like, oh, that's a really great example of Magneto or Charles or any of the other ones. There's, I mean, comparable examples, but not really awesome. Like, this will be what they'll be remembered for. So, those are my opinions on the movie. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.